Well, most businesses struggle to convert leads. Those who leverage the most important story, which is customer stories, see a 55% higher conversion rate on their marketing. So what if the most powerful selling tool isn't your pitch deck, isn't your offer, or isn't your features and benefits, but it's the stories that your customers are already telling? So welcome back, and this is part 5 of the 5-part series on Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall. And so if this is your first time, welcome to the Mind of George Show, or welcome back, because this is the show for entrepreneurs who know that scaling their business is not just about strategies and tactics. It's about breaking free from outdated business models, crappy copy and paste, my soul needs a shower marketing tactics, and the mindset limitations that hold us back. All so that you can grow and scale with ease by mastering your mindset, refining your customer journey, and creating marketing that truly connects with who you are and your audience. And in today, the last part of the series, we're diving deep into customer stories. It's how to let your clients sell for you by capturing and sharing their transformations in a way that creates genuine connection and trust. And here's the thing we must know. Most entrepreneurs accidentally or by bad teaching are stuck trying to convince people to buy when the best salespeople you have are already out there. They're your satisfied customers. And we're going to dive into how to capture and share those powerful stories of transformation that do the selling for you. We dive into why customer stories convert better than any sales pitch, how to capture authentic transformation stories that resonate, the exact framework for crafting compelling customer stories, where and when to use these stories in your marketing and in your business, and the common mistakes that make customer stories fall flat. And one of the ones that shocked me is that most people fall flat because they make the stories too big and they're not relatable. And so we can stand on the rooftops and we can shout about our offer all day long, but nothing builds trust like hearing from someone who's already been through the journey. So if you're ready to document these stories and let your clients do the selling and the transforming for you, this episode will break down and show you exactly how to capture and share their stories in a way that connects and converts. And so without further ado, let's get into the episode. You can shout about your offer or your services or your program all day long. But the biggest breakthroughs, they happen when someone else shares how it changed their life. That's the moment that your audience believes it's possible for them too, which is what we're going to get into today on the last of the series of Stories That Stick. And today's story is all about the customer story, which is the most powerful form of proof that you have. Now, in the previous episodes, if you have not listened to them, we went through the value story, the founder story, the purpose story, and today we're getting into the customer story. And the customer story is really about documenting the magic and transformation that happens with your clients, whether you have physical products or services, it doesn't matter, but it's about flexing the muscle of documenting their experience in their words to be able to share it with other people so that they can see themselves in it. And like I said, the customer story is the most powerful form of proof that we have. It builds credibility, it builds safety, and it builds belief. But only when you do it right. And doing it right really boils down to being able to share the entire story arc, which I'm going to be sharing in today's podcast. And so I'm going to break down how to craft the customer story that sell without selling. And I'll end with one from a personal client of mine, names redacted, that you can model. But these are really, really important. And I've learned that it's probably one of the hardest muscles for me to flex because I forget to ask. I forget to say, hey, what was it like before? How's your life winning now? How does this feel? And it requires us to show up and to hear the transformation that we're having for people and also hear the feedback on areas that we can improve. And so customer stories are the most powerful ones. And I don't even look at them as selling. In the book, what they talk about is how to sell without selling, but really it's how to paint the picture of what's possible for somebody or for somebody to see themselves in that situation, to relate to it, to give them the confidence to borrow it, to move forward, to then pursue that goal. And so let's talk about what a customer story is. A customer story is not just a testimonial. It's not, hey, open your phone, tell me what worked, tell me what you loved. It's not just a testimonial, it's a transformation. And what it does is it really shares the entire journey, both the emotional and the practical journey of someone who said yes to your work and experienced a real shift. Could have said yes to buying your physical product, could have said yes to hiring you as a coach, could have said yes to selling their home with you, could have said yes for you doing their branding. It doesn't matter. It just matters what they said yes to. And a customer story is documenting and being able to share what both the emotional journey and the practical journey was like through that entire process. And it's important to understand that it doesn't have to be these macro or massive big wins. They can be small, they can be big, they can be macro, they can be micro. That is me saying the same thing with two different words to make the point. But regardless of the size, the most important thing is it has to be relatable, meaning that someone who hasn't experienced it has to be able to see themselves in it and feel it and connect with it, not just logically understand it, but to connect with it. And this is what makes them so powerful. And I also want to leave a highlight here as well, because I was on a coaching call a couple of weeks ago with a group of women, and a few of them were sharing that they're very, very turned off by the big wins and the massive case studies, because it makes it feel unapproachable to them. It's like, that's not what I'm after. I'm not after those giant numbers or $1 million months or scaling so aggressively. I'm after these smaller things. And so I think it's an important note to make as well, is that I've seen this in the last decade, that everybody's swinging for the fences. Like, I'm going to help you X this or 10X this or 20X this. But I would submit that all too often that turns people's away because it makes it less approachable and feel less achievable, where a lot of the times it's not real. And so by making these relatable, it can happen in every moment. It can happen in a transformation when somebody spends a day with you. It can happen at the back end of a 1-hour Zoom call when you do a coaching session, or it can be at the completion of 6 to 12 months of one-on-one coaching. They're all there, and they all help people at different stages of the journey, but you have to make them relatable. And so why customer stories work, according to Kendra in the book, which I love, is it helps move somebody from skepticism to self-belief. And so you'll hear me say things like, oh, they're going to borrow confidence till they have enough of their own. But what's happening when somebody's in a decision? They're in a buying decision. They're looking to invest. They're looking to go to an event. They're looking to hire a coach. They're looking to do a customer journey intensive with me. Is what they're asking themselves is, will this work for me? Am I going to be able to do this? Will I be able to learn that process? Will this feel good in the process of doing it? Will I be able to achieve this result? And when they have those questions, the customer story is what answers it before they have to ask those questions. And it doesn't mean it does all the heavy lifting for you, but it does provide you situations or stories for people to see themselves in. Because what tends to happen when we don't have a queue of stories or a Rolodex to go back to, someone will have questions or they'll be on the fence, and what we default to is logic. We default to features and benefits. But as I've taught you, and I will teach you forever around customer journey, customer decisions are not logically based, they're emotionally based. And so when we default to logic, we take the emotion out of it. And that's what a customer story allows us to do. And so when we think about a customer story, according to Kendra's book, which I love, she breaks it down in just 3 parts, which you've heard me reference already. She calls it the arc. You have the normal, which is, what was the client's life before, both personally and professionally? Now, I added that part because I think it's important to always show both the business side and the personal side, or the personal side and the professional side. So that's what the normal is what was the before state? Then you have the explosion, right? The explosion was that catalyst. It was what was the hesitation? What was the fear? The catalyst, the situation, the thing that they were desiring in their life or that they were moving away from that led them to you. And then you have the new normal. The new normal is the outcome, right? Or outcomes. And this is not just what they got, but how they also feel. And it's important to have these in both the personal and the business bucket when getting customer stories to show this transformation to people. And so I'm going to take you through right now, after a sip of coffee, how to craft that customer story. And when it comes down to it, it's really about finding the story. And before I even get into this, it's only going to take a couple of minutes because I want this to be straight to the point and you get to go do it. I help a lot of my one-on-one clients with this, and what I have them do is jump on Zoom calls with their people, and I have them interview them and ask them specific questions that I give them to create this customer story. But it's an incredible tool to use. You can use it on video, you can use it in DMs, you can do it via audio. But what you want to make sure is that you're always including the elements that I'm going to share with you. And so the first part is about finding the right story. And as I said at the beginning of this, you don't need a big result, not this giant result. You need a relatable one. And as I said earlier, a realistic one. And I've learned that I even do this where I'll diminish somebody's result because I don't think it's big enough, but yet that's the story that I share that helps somebody else win. And so it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be massive. It has to be relatable and it has to be realistic. And the thing that you're looking for is you're looking for emotional resonance over the performance metrics. Performance metrics are great. The wins, the new customers, the revenue up, but the emotional resonance, meaning they feel connected to the story that they're telling you, which means somebody else hearing that story or reading that story or seeing that story on your sales page or seeing it when you post it on Instagram or hearing it when you tell it in a keynote or hearing it when you talk about it on a podcast, is you want somebody to feel it. You want them to resonate with it emotionally. And so in these stories, what you're looking for is not just the logic or the data, you're looking for the emotional connection. And you want to make sure when you think about the story arc where you have the normal, then the explosion, and then the new normal, that you're including these elements. And so if you think about the normal, is what was their situation before working with you or before being coached by you or before buying your product? What was their situation? What pain were they facing? What doubts did they have? What was their day-to-day looking like? Say, painting the picture so somebody can see themselves in it. That's the first part because that's the normal. And a question that I like to ask in that section as well is what would have happened if you didn't do anything? Like if you didn't invest in coaching, if you didn't come to the event, if you didn't get on that 1-hour coaching call with me, what would have happened in your life, both personally and professionally, if you didn't take an action? And so you start with what is the situation, right? That's about the person. What's their business life like? What's their personal life like before they had an experience or worked with you with your physical product or your service? Then you ask, what would have happened if you didn't change anything? 30 days in the future, 60 days in the future, what would your life look like both personally and professionally, right? Personally and business if you didn't change anything. The next question or element to include is what were their fears or hesitations in working with you or coming to your event or hiring you as a coach or buying your program or joining your community? What were those fears and hesitations that they felt? Because that's the explosion. Then you get to the new normal. What is their experience like in your program or in your offer or with your product? And I like to be specific, like what are the 3 things that had the biggest impact on you? What had the biggest impact on you personally? And what had the biggest impact on you professionally or in your business? And then you also want to ask not just about the practical outcome, but you want to ask about the emotional outcome as well. So what changed emotionally and practically in both of those buckets? And so you can understand that if you hear these, you hear the elements of what the before state was or the normal, then what the catalyst or the explosion is of like what fears were you facing, what doubts did you have, what was getting in the way, and then the outcome is the after state through their experience. Well, working with you as a coach, or when I started using your product, I started to realize this and I felt this, I achieved this, and it creates this story arc that she talks about in the book. And it's really, really important that we don't try to put this in a box. And the reason that I have people do this on Zoom calls or on connection calls is because you don't want to try to script any of this. You want to allow somebody to speak from the heart. You want them to be able to speak freely in their language and their words to be able to convey the journey and the transformation that they've taken by working with you or being with you or using your product or using your service. And so it's important when you're crafting your customer stories, because you can use these in videos, you can write them on pages, you can write them in emails, you can do social posts about them, you can do all of those different parts, but you want to make sure that you use direct quotes, voice notes, video clips. You want to make sure that you're documenting their story and their journey in their words, in their language, and you're not auditing it or adjusting it. So use the power of the customer story to convey the message and allow them to speak from the heart. And I think it's a really, really important note that you don't ever want to cut out the struggle. If somebody was having a hard moment or a hard time, like I know I get coached, and navigating a divorce has created hard moments for me, and I'm going to end up as somebody's testimonial and case study on the other side. But you don't want to cut out the struggle, because the struggle is relatable, but the struggle is also the credibility. And so it's really, really important when you're developing your customer stories, just like the framework I just gave you, that you keep it real and you keep it authentic to how people are feeling, to what they're experiencing, and that we don't cut out that struggle. And so that's how you craft the customer story. And when it comes to where to use it, where to place it, it's really, really everywhere. But I'm going to give you a couple of ideas because they're relatable to every business, every entrepreneur, no matter what. Number one, launch content. If you're launching a product, if you're in a season of closing your coaching program, if you're launching an event, right? You can use them on sales pages. You can use them in emails. You can use them in follow-ups after a webinar. You can tell the story on a webinar. You can go live and share all of these things, right? If you're on sales calls, if you're connecting with somebody on a triage call or a sales call and they express hesitation and they ask you a question, you can tell them the story of somebody who felt the same way and what happened for them after they said yes. You can include it as a part of your marketing plan as you're out here on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or LinkedIn or even your email. And you can share stories or snapshots of these stories or parts of these stories in your reels or in your carousels or in your captions as you're doing an image post to paint the picture of what it's like to be in an experience with you, either with your physical product or with your service or whatever it is that you're providing. And so what I did for this is I took one of my clients and I wrote basically just a short, and it is not full, but it is a short customer story example that I'm going to read to you so you can hear this to kind of give yourself a frame or something to use for inspiration to be able to start crafting and creating your own. And before I read this to you, I also want you to recognize that it's really, really important, not just with this customer story, but with all the stories that I've hit in this series, is that you document them, that you fall in love with documenting your customer stories and the other stories as well, because the stories that you don't remember are the ones that you can't tell. So if you document them and you read them often, or you have them in your Notion or somewhere to reference, they become a book that you can read and a story that you can share. And we know the power of stories. And so I want you to fall in love with the process. And, when I work with my one-on-one clients, what we do is in the phases of customer journey and the completion compass, which you guys don't know about because I haven't taught it on the podcast, but there's specific phases that people go through in customer journey. There's the ignite phase in the very beginning, which is that 0 to 7 days, which is the most critical phase. Then after that, we have the stabilize phase, where we get them into some daily practices and momentum and consistency. And then there's the third phase. But then the fourth phase is also a phase where somebody has completed a transformation, which is where we will schedule calls and we will start documenting these customer stories. And so your stories are really, really important. And the difference that you make with your customers is really, really important. And you get to make these in a way that supports you, in a way that you can pull them. But most importantly is don't pull them to sit on them. Pull them to utilize them. Utilize them in your messaging. Utilize them on your social. Utilize them on your calls. Utilize them when you're giving a keynote. And make it a part of your day-to-day because stories are really relatable and they help other people see what it's like to be in your world. And I find that they are 1,000 times more powerful than logic and data and all the other parts. So here's the customer story example that I made up to respect client names. So when Sarah found me, she'd already tried 3 different coaches. She had the notebooks, she had the templates, the Google Docs full of half-finished ideas, but she still felt stuck. Not because she didn't know what to do, but because she didn't believe she could do it her way, and everyone said she couldn't. She kept telling herself she had to be more like the other people online, had to be more consistent, more polished, more quote unquote niche. And that was her normal. That was her before story. The moment things shifted, the explosion was a voice note she sent me before hiring me. And she said, I'm tired of trying to fit into a mold. I want to build something that feels just like me, but I'm scared I'll mess it up. And everyone keeps telling me I have to do it their way or I'll fail. And I told her the truth. The only way to mess this up is to build a business that doesn't feel like home. And it was in that point that she hired me. And we didn't change her message. We uncovered the one that she already had inside of her that she was afraid to share. We didn't add 100 new tasks. We simplified her strategy until it felt aligned with how she wanted to run her business. And 6 weeks in, she posted a story sharing something vulnerable with her audience. No pitch, no perfect caption, just straight honesty. And she texted me later that day and said, for the first time ever, I didn't feel like I had to perform. I just showed up, and based on the conversations I had, I'm now running my first in-person event and it's sold out. And that became her new normal. Not just more clarity, not just better content, but confidence in her voice and a business that she was proud to show up for, that she looked forward to running every single day. And so that's an example of one of my clients removing some details to respect and honor that person. But that's an example of a customer story. And so customer stories are really, really powerful because people can relate to them. They can feel themselves in it. They can see themselves in it. And it's what creates the permission slip for them to borrow confidence or to pursue that because it feels achievable to them. And so I want you at minimum to pick one client that you've helped, just one, in the last month, in the last year, in the last 10 years. And I want you for yourself, for your business, for your growth, to map out their normal, their explosion, and their new normal. And if you can do it without speaking to them, amazing. Bonus points if you can jump on a Zoom call and record it, because there's a whole lot of power in that. But once you've developed that story, I want you to post it, share it, or bring it into a conversation this week and actually practice the art of using the customer story. Because you do not need to be the hero of your brand. Your clients already are. Just tell their stories. And if you've heard me teach customer journey long enough, you know one of the critical mistakes people make is the ego journey. This is the solution to the ego journey, which helps you and helps your clients and helps new people find you to come extract your magic from you so you can give it to them. And so I can't wait to see your stories, to hear your stories, to read your stories. And so if you want to share them with me, share them with me. But I will leave you with this. Stories are powerful. In our entire life, we've grown up with stories, and history is transformed through stories. But stories that aren't told, nobody can hear, nobody can resonate with, and nobody can benefit with. Just like a book that stays on the shelf that nobody reads doesn't do any of us any good. So the power of your stories comes down to your willingness and ability to tell those stories. And a customer story is one of the most powerful ways to promote your business, to let everybody know how it is that you're helping. And for me personally, it's way easier to tell a story of one of my clients than it is to self-promote, because it doesn't feel good to me. And so customer stories are powerful, but your story is only powerful if you share it. So share your story, share your value story from the first episode, your founder story, your purpose story, and most importantly, start documenting and collecting these customer stories to bring them into your business and into the world. And so that's what I have for today. I'm going to take one more sip of my coffee, but this framework will help you pull out the transformation. And this is what will connect with people and help them convert if they're ready for your business, for your service, or for your product. And so wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a beautiful day. I want you to remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. So I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.